Yeah, there's lots of debate about that that question. From the science approach, what you're asking me is, as a healthcare professional trained in evidence-based practice based on the Shawitz's definition and the healthcare profession's definition, we're asking which dyslexia programs have been tested by randomized controlled trials research. The reason why that's such an important criteria is it means you compared this treatment to a second, third, or fourth treatment, or to a second, third treatment and a control group, and you did direct comparisons of the treatment's effectiveness with a group of kids who are very similar. So let me give you an example. One of the 5-year studies we did with the Now Foundations program, that was Now Foundations for Speech, Language, Reading, and Spelling, was we screened 1,500 5-year-olds. We pulled out 160 kids who were in the bottom 12% on the best predictors of would dyslexia be showing up by age 9. And the reason why we can do that was Joe Torgerson and Rick Wagner had done a big longitudinal study in the mid 90s, and they measured a whole bunch of skills at age 5. And then they followed those same kids through age 6 and retested them, age 7, retested them, age 8, and retested them. And those kind of a longitudinal study helps figure out, was there a test score or test scores at age 5 that predicts who's going to be a good reader, who's going to be a mediocre reader, and who's going to be a reader who really struggles and would probably be diagnosed with dyslexia by age 9. So that's how we screened those kids to figure out which kids were at the highest risk. And it was a measure of a skill called phoneme elision. That means you have the child say cat, and then the examiner says to the child, now say cat again, but don't say the k sound. Or you have them say the word like flame. You say, now say flame again, but don't say the ul sound. And in the first example, cat without the k, the child should say at. Flame without the ul, the child should say fame. But in this situation, these kids at age 5 in this big study all severely struggle with that skill set. And so their scores on this phoneme elision, their performance on a measure of their letter name knowledge, and their performance on a rapid naming measure showed that they were in the bottom 12% for their predictors in terms of their most likely. They're almost in the top 10% for likely going to struggle to read and spell by age 9. And then you split those into 4 groups. And what we found was if you got no treatment, or if you got some systematic daily help doing whatever method the teacher was using as her literacy curriculum, but you got it one-on-one, because it was like maybe the program didn't matter. Maybe it's the personal attention that matters. And the third group was systematic, structured, explicit phonics, an OG type of approach where you go to letters first and you really start working on the letters and go down from letters to the phonemes, or from letters to sounds and letters to words. And it's more of a phonic structured approach. Interestingly, in that study, there was no difference in the outcomes between no treatment, a little extra one-on-one time, and a systematic structured phonics program. The finding was 25 to 40% of those kids who came to kindergarten in the bottom 12% would not pass kindergarten and first grade if they got in those 3 different comparisons. No treatment, extra help one-on-one with whatever curriculum the teacher was using, or even the systematic structured literacy phonics type program. In contrast, the kids who got the Now Foundations for Speech, Language, Reading, and Spelling program, it wasn't 25 to 40% who did not pass kindergarten and first grade. It was 9. And in a big study like this, one of the statistics we use to figure out how likely is this difference going to happen over and over again, it's called a statistically significant difference. And in that study, this is a big NICHD funded research study. It's a nationally reviewed study by experts across the country. It gets ranked, and then it gets reviewed again before we even publish the findings. That study showed that, yes, this was the only reliable difference in the study was the kids who got the neurodevelopmental, which is a speech processing program first. It goes to the letters and orthographics and the letter sounds second, and phonics after that. It's a very typical developmental cycle that we see kids go through who don't struggle to read and spell. That was the most effective program, and it was reliably so that would be expected it would get the same results every time you do it again and again and again. And again, that's why you do the randomized controlled trials. In contrast, most phonics programs, whether it's an OG-based program or some other program that somebody's made up and hasn't studied yet, those programs are typically not going to be as effective, and we have no evidence that each student with dyslexia is going to get similar results. And I know people like to say, yeah, but everybody's brain works differently and every dyslexic kid is different. There's a degree of that that's accurate, which is different individuals with dyslexia can have a different number of co-occurring difficulties. Not everyone's going to have a language disorder and dyslexia. Not everyone's going to have ADHD plus dyslexia. So there's variety in the additional struggles a child could have, but the core deficit of dyslexia, as it's defined today and as it's diagnosed, really relates to that phonological processing and those three criteria that the DSM-5 requires only one of the three to be met to be diagnosed with dyslexia. And that is, does the individual have a significant impairment in reading accuracy or in reading speed or in reading comprehension? And if you have one, two, or three of those criteria are met, it only takes one, but you can have two or you can have three, then you'll be diagnosed with dyslexia. And then we know in that situation, we would expect the same outcomes with this treatment program when the individuals match the kids we actually had in the treatment study.